Sorry, buddy, forgot to grab your plane ticket on the day of the company's recreational trip. I couldn't believe the words thrown at me as I arrived at the airport. I've had my share of trouble with my boss Smith before, but this time was unforgivable. There was never a ticket for you in the first place. Hearing that, my colleagues burst into laughter all at once. Seeing their faces thrilled to no end, I finally got it. Smith and my coworkers have been plotting to make a laughingstock of me from the start. Shaking with anger at their cruel and sneaky tactics, I was furious, but their smiles would soon turn to fear. In just a few hours, my name is White. I'm a 45-year-old software engineer. Both my parents worked with computers, so instead of video games, my playthings were bulky PCs. Ever since I got a hobby computer that could do both gaming and programming for my birthday, I've been hooked. To me, my parents were not just beloved family members, but also the best computer teachers anyone could have. Dinner time was when I could meet face to face and talk about computers with my parents. For me, it was the most enjoyable time ever. I continued to thrive as a computer enthusiast through middle and high school, being part of the computer club. I was happy just programming with my friends, but at the urging of our advisor, I decided to try entering a programming contest. Submitting content that made programming fun and accessible for beginners, I surprisingly won an award. Even in high school, I was recognized, and some classmates experienced programming for the first time through my project. Computers always seemed complicated, but your project made me realize that they're interesting. Being praised by classmates I rarely spoke with, I remember feeling both embarrassment and joy. Choosing to be a software engineer as my profession might have been largely influenced by this experience. After that, I gained experience as an in-house IT specialist at various companies. The job of an in-house IT specialist is to manage everything isolated within the company, ensuring smooth operation of our IT environment. From coding to managing IT equipment and proposing plans for system implementations, everything was entrusted to us IT specialists. Other than that, we also deal with the daily operation and maintenance of systems, physically manage PCs, smartphones, tablets, address security measures, and respond to troubles and inquiries from all over the company. When it comes to IT, if there's something unknown within the company, it's all on us IT specialists to handle, which means the responsibility is huge. Currently, I'm working on developing new systems at Mono Corporation, a general trading company that deals with cosmetics and daily necessities, as well as working on the company's help desk and source code maintenance. Luckily, I was welcomed by kind colleagues and have been working in a comfortable environment. However, one day marked the beginning of a dramatic change in my life. The trigger was a personnel change that brought in a new department head. The new head was a man in his 50s named Smith, who had previously worked in the sales department. Having no affiliation or experience with the IT department, his appointment as head of IT was puzzling, leaving me and my colleagues scratching our heads. I later learned that Smith had been transferred due to conflicts with other employees in the sales department. He had caused problems by imposing his ways, so it was thought he'd be less likely to stir up trouble in the IT department where he knew nothing, effectively warming a chair as a figurehead. But what the upper management hadn't anticipated was Smith's determination. From that day on, we IT specialists were subjected to incredible pressure. Since I've arrived, I expect thoroughly efficient work. If you think you can slack off like before, you're sorely mistaken. On his first morning, Smith lined us up and declared this with his arms crossed. We exchanged glances in disbelief, but true to his word, Smith began to meddle in our work the very next day. He counted the number of internal tasks we handled hour by hour and posted the counts on the wall, like a sales department competing for the number of deals closed. The bar graphs displaying our figures made my colleagues visibly anxious. The count increased with each system trouble resolved or employee helped, and if we didn't meet the target numbers set by Mr. Smith, he would berate us for not trying hard enough. "White, you had no report last week. Were you even working?" My current job involves system maintenance. As I reported, there were no emergency issues to report. I responded politely, but Smith seemed displeased. "No issues, so you were slacking off then?" No regular maintenance is necessary to prevent issues from arising. Even as I tried to explain, Smith just frowned in annoyance, not willing to listen. Instead, he began flipping through a file in the middle of our conversation. It appeared to be my personnel file handed over from HR. After staring at the contents for a while, Smith let out an unpleasant smirk. "So, at 45, you've been hopping from one company to another. Can't keep a job for long, huh? That speaks volumes about your incompetence." With that, he waved me off as if to say he had heard enough, intending to dismiss me. I was utterly stunned to be directly called a failure to my face. Indeed, I've been through several companies, but I've always produced satisfactory results wherever I worked, including at my current company, Monocorp. I've always worked hard, never once considering myself a failure. I should have taken the opportunity to thoroughly explain my role as a software engineer and my job responsibilities to Smith. However, I never expected that Smith, even after being assigned to the IT department, would continue not to study and learn. I chose to keep quiet rather than stir up trouble. I also believed that once he saw the quality of my work, he would understand my value. Instead of confronting him directly, I thought it would be better to work together and get along. That approach turned out to be a big mistake. From the next day, Smith started to harass me. Having worked at many companies where everyone got along, this was a new and unpleasant experience for me. Some of the younger employees resigned due to Smith's illogical departmental reforms, but instead of addressing the issue, he doubled down on his policies. He seemed to think that if employees remained under these conditions, they wouldn't leave the company easily in the future. Moreover, Smith began assigning us his work, claiming he didn't understand it and leaving for home at the end of his scheduled shift. We ended up working late into the night, barely catching the last train home, and the work followed us home. As these days went on, the atmosphere within the department grew tense. Knowing that becoming one of Smith's favorites could spare them from unreasonable quotas and excessive overtime, everyone started trying to curry favor with him. Eventually, the entire department began to ostracize me. As a result, I ended up handling nearly all the tedious internal procedures, making my workload even heavier with little chance to take breaks. I gradually lost the ability to think and just mechanically worked through the tasks in front of me. Then, one day, as I was dealing with the usual troublesome issues, Smith suddenly declared, "It's about time we start planning the company retreat, just like last year. I've been put in charge of organizing it." At the mention of the trip, the other employees seemed excited and began buzzing with anticipation. The company's retreats are lavish, with all expenses paid by the company as a token of appreciation for our hard work each year. Famous destinations are chosen, and it's rumored that some employees joined the company looking forward to these trips. But I was so drained I couldn't even think about enjoying a trip. As I continued with my work, Smith suddenly tapped my shoulder. "How about you, White? What do you think about the retreat this year? We're going all out with a trip to Hawaii, and it seems like our department will be attending in full." I hesitated but decided to express my intention to participate. I thought that being in a different setting might help me build better relationships with the other employees. Hearing my answer, Smith grinned. "Right. Someone like you, a poor employee, wouldn't want to miss out. Since your salary is so low, this might be your only chance to go to Hawaii with all expenses paid by the company." "No, that's not what I meant," I tried to correct him, but Smith, still grinning, raised his voice. Got it. Just don't be late on the day. It'd be a problem if you were slacking off at work and then were late to the retreat, too." "Thank you," I said, figuring saying anything more would be futile. So I bowed my head, swallowing my frustration. Smith, seemingly satisfied, returned to his desk with a loud laugh. Yet I still harbored some hope. I hoped that through this retreat we could all get along like before. With that thought, I faced the mountain of work before me, looking forward to the day of the trip. A month before the retreat, invitation letters were sent out to each department in bulk. Despite being for employees, they were meticulously crafted, conveying the president's appreciation for us. Looks like it details the schedule and destination. The hotel seems pretty nice. I'm looking forward to the sightseeing, too. Excited, I marked my attendance and submitted it to Smith. It seemed like the entire IT department would be attending. Smith, counting the attendance slips, pumped us up. Let's have a blast at the destination. It's all about fun, no formalities. If you're coming, White, make sure to finish your work properly. It would be in poor taste to bring work to the retreat. Smith, in a surprisingly good mood, was even cracking jokes and smiling at me. Yes, I'm looking forward to a good time during the retreat. I thought this might be a chance to improve my relationship with Smith. With that hope in my heart, I returned to my desk, feeling lighter, aware that this expectation would soon be shattered. On the day of the retreat, I arrived at the airport earlier than the time mentioned in the invitation. Since I left my house early to avoid being late, there were only a few employees besides me at the meeting spot due to the holiday season and it being peak travel time. The airport was bustling with planes taking off and landing, passengers coming and going as the meeting time approached. Employees began to show up in small groups. I heard that the president and the upper management had already departed on a different flight. The rest of us were receiving our plane tickets grouped by department. Since the tickets were bought online in bulk, each employee received their 2-deep barcode ticket via email. I lined up with the other IT specialists to receive my ticket from Smith. Smith seemed really excited about going to Hawaii, already dressed in a short-sleeved shirt. From the airport, my colleagues were receiving their plane tickets one by one and started walking towards the boarding gate. Has everyone got their tickets? Let's head out then, I said. Excuse me, I haven't received mine yet. I realized I was the only one left behind. Yet, as if he couldn't see me, Smith began moving towards the boarding gate. When I called out to him in a panic, Smith turned around with a look of surprise. "Why are you here? Weren't you supposed to be skipping the retreat?" he asked. "No, I am coming. I submitted my attendance form to you directly. Where's my plane ticket?" I replied. Even as I asked, a chill went down my spine with a bad premonition facing me. All tense, Smith showed an unpleasantly sly smile. "All right. I thought you'd stay behind to work as usual. My bad, I forgot your ticket." With that, Smith turned to leave as if nothing was wrong. "Wait, please. How am I supposed to get to Hawaii then?" I asked desperately. "No idea. We're all heading out for the retreat now. Don't start complicating things and causing trouble." Frustrated by his selfish reasoning, I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Don't know, but this is a company event, right? Could you at least contact the travel agency for me?" I persisted. "You're being persistent. How about you just give up? If your stubbornness causes a delay and ruins the retreat for everyone, then what?" By this time, other employees had started to notice our argument and came back to see what was happening. The colleagues gathered around Smith to find out what was happening. "White here is saying he wants to go on the retreat, but there was never a ticket for him in the first place." Hearing this, my colleagues burst into laughter all at once. "Finally caught on, huh? Gotcha," Smith said, seeing their faces as if they couldn't contain their amusement. I finally realized Smith and my colleagues had been plotting to exclude me and make me the butt of their joke from the start. My whole body shook with anger at their malicious and underhanded tactics. The loud laughter of Smith and the others was so obnoxious that it made the surrounding passengers frown. After a while, when Smith finally managed to control his laughter, still catching his breath, he told me, "I canceled the trip for you. Thinking about you." "What do you mean?" I asked with a scowl. Amidst his laughter, Smith continued talking. "The company pays for the hotel and flight, but for someone poor like you, enjoying luxury would make returning to work in your regular life feel unbearable, right? I thought it would be better for you to skip the retreat and work alone for your own good. I now see what kind of person you are, Smith, and it seems my colleagues are of the same character," I said, leaving those words behind. I turned my back on Smith and his group. Their loud laughter followed me as I walked away. But their smiles would soon turn into expressions of horror. In just a few hours later, Smith and his group, stretching and enjoying the bright atmosphere of Hawaii, were saying, "Hawaii is truly exceptional. This is the best retreat ever. Feeling so good. Is it because that gloomy white isn't here?" A colleague made a snide comment. Smith burst into loud, graceless laughter. However, it was when the group walked out of the airport, finally arrived, that they took quite some time. To their surprise, I was already sitting in the seats of the bus they had reserved for transport. Smith and the colleagues stopped in their tracks, their mouths agape. "Why? How are you in Hawaii? You shouldn't have had a ticket, and there's no way you could have gotten here before us," Smith said, utterly speechless. I struggled to suppress my laughter at Smith's flustered shouting. "It's simple. It's peak tourist season now. With flights departing every hour, I bought a ticket for an earlier flight." "You bought a ticket, but where did the money come from? Besides, every flight should be fully booked at this time." Smith turned pale, spatting out his words in anger. Economy class was full, but luckily there was a last-minute cancellation in first class. Actually, at my response, Smith's face turned even paler, utterly speechless. The number of flights connecting our nearby airport in New York with Honolulu in Hawaii can reach up to 32 a day during peak season like this, making it one of the busiest routes with flights departing every hour. That time, realizing I had no ticket, I immediately went to the airport counter. I inquired about available seats on a flight to Honolulu. Fortunately, there was one cancellation, and I purchased the ticket right there, enjoying my journey to Hawaii ahead of everyone else. Despite my explanation, Smith still looked unconvinced, snapping back at me, "Lies. There's no way a poor employee like you could afford a first-class ticket. Did you pour all your living expenses into it, that desperate to join the retreat?" "Poor employee? What are you talking about?" From beside me, an elderly man leaned forward to address Smith, his puzzled expression causing Smith to jump with a short scream. "President, why are you here with White of all people?" Smith stammered. "I came to greet White, who's been a great help to our company. Williams, the president of Monos Corporation," replied sharply. "Even so, you have been quite rude since a while ago. Let's hear the full story." I was just giving my subordinate White a warning. He suddenly wanted to join the retreat, disrupting our group's harmony. Smith started to fabricate a story to suit his narrative. However, far from being convinced, Williams's brows furrowed in anger. "Don't speak so rudely. White is a highly skilled freelance software engineer whom our company has contracted. Though he's assigned to your department, his position is equal to, if not more important than yours." "More important than me? Impossible." Smith's face turned pale, his whole body trembling. "I'm not an employee of this company, but a freelance software engineer who has contracted with many companies before," I explained. Smith thought I was just an employee who frequently changed jobs, but in reality, I've been contracted for specific tasks by the company. "The advantage of utilizing freelance engineers is the flexibility in hiring talent as needed," Williams interjected. "If the company requires specific skills that are not available in-house, they can hire freelancers like us as immediate assets." When the heavy lifting of development is over and it moves to operation, a highly specialized engineer isn't always necessary, I continued. In such cases, contracting freelancers allows for the termination of the contract upon completion, effectively reducing running costs for engineers, which is a significant benefit for the company. He was introduced as a skilled service engineer to work in our company, and yet he's been treated disrespectfully, being called poor and not even reading the materials given to you properly. Williams said sternly, "What's all this about?" "I'm sorry, it was just a small misunderstanding. There was no ill will. Please forgive me," Smith mumbled. Being reprimanded directly by the president, Smith was shaking so badly he looked like he might collapse. Afterwards, Smith collected himself so as not to disturb others, and we moved to our accommodations with the rest of the employees. Williams decided not to reprimand Smith and his group further during our stay in Hawaii, hoping for an enjoyable retreat, but not being reprimanded probably only increased his anxiety. Despite the anticipation for the Hawaii trip, Smith was nervous from start to finish. It seemed like he couldn't enjoy Hawaii at all. As for me, I toured the planned tourist spots with Williams and came to love Hawaii. It goes without saying that interacting with employees from other departments made it a very meaningful retreat. After returning from the trip, Smith and the colleagues who had harassed me were all in a dejected state, continuing their work. They seemed jittery, possibly expecting a salary cut or some sort of punishment. But what happened next took an unexpected turn. Shockingly, it was revealed that Smith had been selling company information to a rival company. Having been tempted with a job offer, it seems Smith harbored a considerable grudge for being moved from the sales department, ignoring the fact that his own misconduct with subordinates was the cause. He was angry, believing the company failed to recognize his abilities. A rival company approached him offering an attractive position if he provided them with information. "I've dedicated 30 years to sales. If I'm going to be dumped into some incomprehensible IT department, I might as well bring the company down," he said. Smith fell into their hands, handing over documents containing sensitive information about talented personnel and upcoming products. However, what the rival company most desired was information from the IT department where I worked. The very reason Smith was targeted was because he was a complete novice in IT. Sneaking out information without the employees noticing was out of his league. Moreover, at the time he was approached for the extraction, I was almost solely responsible for the IT engineering tasks. In other words, without dealing with me, he couldn't get the information he needed. That's why Smith had become even harsher in his treatment towards me, aiming to drive me to resign on my own. However, since I remained dedicated to my duties and showed no signs of quitting, Smith became desperate. That's when he concocted the plan to ostracize me during the retreat. "If only you had resigned willingly, I wouldn't have had to struggle," Smith thought. "Making you alienated from other employees during the retreat would drive you out of the company." Smith had suppressed my participation form and deliberately omitted my plane ticket reservation. Contrary to expectations, White purchased his ticket out of his own pocket. Furthermore, he exposed my misconduct in front of the president. "So, you were harassing me with baseless accusations because I wasn't resigning easily, right?" I questioned. "Indeed. Had that situation of being completely isolated continued, I might have submitted my resignation. At the very least, I wouldn't have extended my contract," I continued. Once I left the workplace, employees who had become entirely dependent on others for their work could have been easily outmaneuvered to extract information without a guardian like me, I concluded. White is a key component of our internal systems. Had he left midway, the damage to our company would have been immeasurable, Williams said. At those words, Smith's face fell, and he slumped to the floor in defeat. What followed was a rapid series of events. Caught in a panic, Smith contacted the personnel from the rival company, and the encounter was secured by the next day. The company bulletin board displayed the disciplinary actions related to this incident, listing the names of the IT department employees who had harassed me, including Smith. "Why am I the only one getting fired?" Smith protested angrily. Smith, who received the harshest punishment, was infuriated, shouting with his shoulders hunched in anger. Naturally, Smith was found to have intentionally leaked information to a rival company, violating his confidentiality obligations. Thus, disciplinary action was taken against him. Despite Mr. Smith's red-faced protests, we have irrefutable evidence in the investigation documents. What you did is unforgivable. The company has decided on disciplinary dismissal. No severance pay will be issued, Williams declared firmly. Smith collapsed to the floor, crying loudly, regardless of the onlookers. Among the IT department colleagues, some had been coaxed into misconduct by Smith and stood there sweating profusely in a daze. It was a pitiful scene of their own making, leaving no room for sympathy. They had to face the consequences of their actions. Thus, the turmoil that began with Smith's arrival finally came to an end. After being dismissed, the former Smith struggled to find re-employment. As rumors that he had tried to sell company information to a rival spread, no company would take him. Abandoned by his family and divorced, his wife and children took everything, including the house and assets, leaving him with nothing. He managed to find work as a temp, bouncing between various odd jobs like traffic control and road construction. Those colleagues who had harassed me and assisted the rival company were also dismissed, but the other employees, showing sincere remorse, continue to work to this day. Your future performance will be our judgment. Give your best in what you can do now, Williams warmly advised them as company president, leading to their renewed apologies to me. Since then, the work environment has returned to its initial peaceful state. As for me, I finally completed the system development and left the office on time after a long while, enjoying some relaxation at home. The work I used to do almost single-handedly was completed much faster with the cooperation of my colleagues. While working together, they were once again amazed by my skills. Sharing my knowledge more in the future will undoubtedly help them grow into competent service engineers. When that time comes, maybe I'll graduate from the current company I used. Wherever you are, whatever the situation, make sure to complete your work with dedication, my father's voice quietly reminded me. Next to him, my mother nodded, enjoying our family dinner together for the first time in a long while. Thinking back, my aspiration to become a service engineer began by watching my parents dedicate themselves to their work. Like them, I'll continue to respect clients and build good relationships with my colleagues. Helping each other is indeed an essential component of creating a wonderful environment. With that thought in mind, I'm heading to the company again today to complete my work with pride. I'll be sitting in front of my computer